If you find you're unsettled listening today, reach out to a trusted friend or go to tradespodcast.com and click on resources.
We are men in the trades, forging health in the drug poisoning crisis. This is
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk.
We're here today with Shawn, who's one of our steering committee members, who's also one of our co-producers of Off the Clock Toolbox Talk. And his counselor has also come on today, Sam, and Sam's a counselor at Fraser House Society. I actually am really grateful that Shawn asked Sam to come on the podcast today because it helps us, I think, understand a little bit too about what counselors are actually like. We also have Daniel with us today. Daniel is our co-host, and he's also a person with living experience.
Well, hi, everyone. I am glad to be here with Shawn and Sam, and just talking about addiction is destigmatizing it. So I'm always encouraged when someone is vulnerable and willing to come on and talk about their journey. Yeah, I've done that now for years, and it's always a bit of a wrestle in a sense with knowing how vulnerable to be. Shawn, I'm glad you're willing to talk to us. Why don't we jump right in and maybe give us a little bit of a background on how you got involved in the trades and what that looked like early on for you. And when you did get first involved, what was going on with your substance use at that time?
Hello, my name's Shawn. Thanks for having me. When you asked to maybe think back of, some of the earlier days or where it really first started for me, I remember when I was my very first construction sort of job, I was working, doing renovations in West Vancouver, Caulfield Drive, and we were camping out during the summertime, staying on the grounds, kind of doing the night keep. It was with my cousin and another friend of ours, and we were using smoking pot all through the evenings, and we'd work the next day, and that was kind of my first job. We were teenagers at the time, and so that was kind of my first introduction of using while I was kind of working, and it started just by smoking pot, being honest. That's all it was. And, it obviously certainly progressed from there.
That wasn't probably a big problem at first, I imagine. But it sounds like that drug use was paired right off the bat with work. So you immediately have this connection in the trades to working and using drugs.
Yeah, thinking that it was okay to use while you're working. And, it may have started small by smoking pot, but that whole, I guess that's where the mindset kind of, you allow yourself or tell yourself that it's okay, or it's not that big of a deal. And it's funny how that progressed as you started using other substances. As you got older, jobs, you're required to, that was a summertime job for me at the time. But fast forwarding a few years, where you're now out, you have rent, you have bills, your car, and your employment is what you need to survive and pay your bills. So if you're using during those times or while you're working or before and after work, you're really not willing to tell anybody or be vulnerable and let anybody know that you're struggling at any point in time, because you're going to lose everything. So you just told yourself that it was okay to keep going, doing what you're doing.
So that was the beginning of hiding your behaviors, I suppose. Then what was the culture like in the job space, and were other people not forthcoming with their drug use, or was it visible to you and around you, or everyone was hiding?
When I started ironworking, there was a lot of that around. That was kind of there's a lot of people using. That's what you kind of seen. That's what you figured was okay to do, and everybody was hiding it, or if they weren't hiding, I was still young at the time. You thought that the people that did know that they were using it, because there was obviously sometimes people that were higher up, like supervisors, and then even higher up than that. Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know. And if they did know, maybe they were allowing it.
Just thinking back to that early summer smoking weed on the job, what was it doing for you? What do you think connected you to that substance, and what did you find in it?
To be honest, I wouldn't really be able to say what I found in it. I was 15 at the time, but, you thought it was, well, being honest, my dad smoked pot. So I've learned a lot of the things that I picked up, how I was brought up and who I was brought up around. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds like it was almost socially sanctioned right there from the get-go. You know, you're mentioning you're with your cousins and it just was normalized right away,
Mhm.
right?
Well, sorry, now thinking about it, my mom and my dad were going through a breakup at the time, as well as my aunt and uncle. So yeah, like I was out there with my cousin. So his mom and dad were kind of going through a split up, and so were my parents. I guess, that would have played a lot into it, like thinking about it in more depth.
Mhm.
But you're
But
just
that
getting
wasn't the
through it in the
reason
moment.
why. Yeah, that wasn't like the exact reason why I was smoking pot, but somewhere there was an underlying thing that was obviously causing a bit of a problem or a bit of pain that you're or another trying to mask, I guess, or
Yeah.
Ease, trying to
pull
ease it.
yourself, pull yourself, yeah, not having to feel that
Yeah.
pain, I guess.
The clinical word is self-regulation, and we all have to do it all the time, right? And that's
Yeah.
like, we never think overtly, oh, I need to use this because of this, and that. You're just like, you worked, now you're chilling out, and this is what's happening, right? And it's just, yeah, it's subtle.
And it is, and it's funny how I blocked that out. Like it took me a minute there to kind of think about that, or what
Mhm.
reasons were behind my use, and it shows how easily you kind of can block some of that pain or what was going on in your life at that time. I almost had completely forgotten about it here, but it is in there, and you
Mhm.
have to realize that some of those things that went on in your life or things that you were dealing with
Mhm.
probably did play a large part in why you sought out to try to take away from that pain or that feel or whatever it is that you were going through at that time, right?
I think that we've talked about a lot of times on this show about how drugs in and of themselves are not, of course, they obviously play a role in addiction, but they are not the primary drivers of addiction. And that journey that we go on, that you're describing, of trying to explore and find out what the things are that in our lives, the pain, the loss, the traumas that we've experienced, and those layers that are part of what we're trying to understand about ourselves that may have been driving a driving force behind our addictions. I don't know. That's a lifelong journey. I think I'm still exploring that for myself. I often, people will ask me, hey, what caused your addiction? Or they want a quick answer or a sentence or a paragraph, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just not possible.
No.
There's so many variables
No,
and our lives are so complex and layer upon layer. And um, I think just having that awareness, that knowledge that there were things going on. I was unsettled within myself. I wasn't fully at peace. I was impacted by my parents' separation and divorce. And I mean, what
Well,
15-year-old can process through all those feelings and emotions and understand exactly how they're going to respond to that and react to that, and the way that they're
exactly.
going to seek relief from those difficult emotions. So,
Well, and at
Mhm.
15, everything's just about relationships, like social, like your friends, your buddies. That's what everything is about. So, if
that's right.
that's kind of the culture that you're in, and what's being impressed upon you as the way to relax or the way to chill out or whatever, then obviously that's the direction that you're going to go. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty typical developmental place. Not saying it's good or healthy, but it's pretty typical, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
If it wasn't for, like, Sam being on here, she's been able to help me understand and you know, and see these layers or these things that have happened and allow me to, to tell myself that, like I mean, things happened that, I have my journey, but it doesn't have to define me, like I had all these struggles. I had all these things happen to me, people, places, and things. A lot of it that I blocked out I had tried to block out, and I now know like to not block out. You have to be aware of everything that's happened in your life because it's
Because it affects
recently
you.
because it affects you. And Sam's helped me kind of understand a lot of the things that have happened in my life. There's reasons why I did what I did, and it's okay because I'm doing something different now. It's not where I was or where I am now, but where I am going.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. I just got a warm feel in my heart.
hmm, yeah.
I think it's really ties in with what Daniel was saying, and that it is a lifelong process of unfolding and coming to terms with and understanding, your life to date and where you're going as well. And like Shawn and I have been working together for almost a year now, and it's still, something new crops up every couple of weeks, and it's like this realization or a light bulb goes on, and it's been there the whole time, but it's just you're in the time and space to be able to put those pieces together and evolve the narrative.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting when things pop up and you're like, how did I not see that or think of that sooner? Because it was there all the time. But, we're not always in that place where we're ready to see. So, Shawn, you had mentioned offline that kind of when you went into the camps, that's when things really escalated in terms of your addiction. What was that like? What happened there and what led you into the camps?
The camp life, I remember I had to clean up for a week or maybe a bit more so I could even get into the camps, because you had to go for a piss test before you could even fly up there. And I mean, I know for me, every single time you came down or you had to do one of those piss tests, you were either going in there with fake urine or you were just cleaning up for that week. And then as soon as you got up there, you were fine. I mean, the drugs ran rampant through the camps, and all the camps, or at least I know they did when I was up there. The whole work scenario in those camps, and the pressure, the deadlines, and you're going up there for 21 days straight. You only get 7 days off. You're working your butt off. It doesn't take much if you've already, like if you've got a bit of an addiction, it doesn't take much for it to be around for you to start using it. I remember a few different times waking up in camp and hearing about somebody overdosing in their camp room. And, it's those one-offs. Those are the times that it happens.
Yeah. I don't imagine there was a lot of conversation around harm reduction and support. And what about even encouraging guys to, take a look at their addictions, maybe do something about it or talk to someone? Were you hearing or having conversations like that when you're out there?
Absolutely not. I mean, I only wish there was. I was talking with Sam about that earlier, about how, I only wish I had heard or had a little glimpse or into the multitude of things, people, places, and things that there are out there to help people that are struggling. The employer or supervisor needs to be able to be aware and pay attention to their employees and their guys. And I guess openness for them to be able to come forward if they're struggling with either their emotions or physically struggling, or with their addictions. They need to be able to feel comfortable coming forward and asking for help instead of being pushed out into the field and get this done. We need it done. They know that they may even know that you're using it. It didn't matter. They just needed the job done.
Yeah. 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 I can relate to that. I remember I had a job once where, I wasn't doing well and I was a lead on the job, and I thought I needed to probably head to treatment. Things were disintegrating fairly rapidly. And I did disclose to my employer at the time and told them what was going on. And they said, yeah, no problem. That's great. Can you go to treatment in 6 months after this project is over? Right. So there was no framework or understanding for the urgency. This was pre-fentanyl, the pre-toxic drug poisoning crisis, but there was no understanding of the urgency or the life and death nature of what so many who are struggling with an addiction are facing on a daily basis. The way you're describing the camps sounds very lonely if people aren't connecting and there's no space to be honest or talk with people. What was your experience in that regard?
Well, it was a very lonely setting. I can remember many nights in my camp room alone, and the way it was set up, you weren't really able to go and hang out or, have these places to connect or, meetings at the camps or newsletters or things on bulletin boards about places that people can go or people they can talk with if they're struggling. There was none of that. There was none of that. I don't know what there is now, but I mean, even today on a lot of the job sites I still go to and talk to people on, still really shy, like it's not out there that people should be able to openly go to their employer and be like, hey, look, I'm struggling with this, can you help? And employers need to be able to be there for their guys because they just need to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it sounds to me like a lot of them want to be, and they're learning how right now, but it's still the beginning of this movement. And so, and this is a part of this podcast is hopefully part of that movement in encouraging employers to get the kind of information they need to educate themselves, to create it that kind of environment where you can connect. And I am hearing now of some work camps that have counselor or more of a wellness center, I guess, for lack of a better term, on site, and some people access it and some people don't. And since the pandemic, now online counseling is very accessible. It's not for everybody because a lot of us need to co-regulate with the counselor while we're talking to them, but it's better than kick in the head. So so some people are starting to access that now on work sites as well. So, and this podcast hopefully is maybe a little bit of a window. And, you know, like I've never worked in work camps, but I know during the lockdown portion of the pandemic, podcast saved me because I felt like I was able to be with my people, and that's what we're hoping this podcast does a little bit with people in any kind of an isolated situation.
So on that note, then, Shawn, I'm kind of curious how you did find support, where you found support, and like how the process of starting to reach out began for you.
For me, I stopped working at camps. I got a phone call when I was in my camp room from my mother saying her goodbyes. She was in the hospital. She was going to have a few tumors removed, and that was to be it. She didn't tell anybody she was going in for her surgery. She just thought she was going to be in and out and everything was going to be fine. So I got a phone call and she was saying her goodbyes. I remember flying home, and I spent a week with my mom in the hospital before she passed away. And yeah, I really went downhill. I was down on the streets, downtown Vancouver, right after she passed away. And I knew I didn't want that. I went out pretty hard for probably a year after my mom passed. I just knew inside that there was something more. Like it didn't have to be this way. I just knew that there's something more. And I remember my mom, before she had passed away, mentioning things like counseling and treatment. And I knew that there was Fraser House in my community of Mission. And I remember the first time I walked through the Fraser House doors there for my first counseling session. And then I kind of got directed to treatment. And that's kind of where the ball got rolling for me, for, you know, knowing that there was, hey, people out there that are going to help me and want to see me get better. And, you know, I don't have to stay living like this. I'm not alone. There's other people out there that have gone through very similar things, and it didn't get easy right away either.
That's a powerful legacy, though, that, you know, your mother passes away and you remember that she was the one who had talked to you about recovery and counseling and stuff, and that she left that
Fraser House.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously I was feeling defeated, but I didn't want to die. And I think everybody out there, you know, like, life is a beautiful thing. I mean, it's magical that we're here, and nobody wants to die. And I think there's that little spark of wanting change, wanting something better for themselves. I think it just needs to start with that.
Yeah. Well, it seems that people really don't make a choice or they decide to change until things have gotten so bad that that pain of staying the same is greater than the pain or the challenge that they would have to face to change. And you know, I mean, we've got that term, which I'm not a big fan of, rock bottom, because, well, especially nowadays, we all know what rock bottom means.
Yeah, we got to catch people before they hit rock bottom, because you don't get to get rock bottom these days. You die long before rock bottom. So when I went to Kinghaven, when I went to treatment, my first time there, it was only, I think, 70 days I was clean. I think it was maybe 63 days clean. And that was my first time ever taking a stab at getting help and cleaning up, or my first look at recovery.
And how old were you then?
I was maybe 37. Yeah. And so that was my first look at recovery, my first time at, you know, attempting treatment, first time I'd ever even really knew that there was something like that out there. and I had been covered by the like there was funds for it to help get me in, fortunately. I mean, I was on the street, I had nothing. I didn't think that I was going to be able to afford any help. So when I did find my way there, that the first few months there was a lot that I learned about myself, about my addiction, about where I wanted to go with my life and where I was. That kind of just gave me that little bit of fuel to know that I was in the right place. Mm. And so, like I said, it wasn't easy. I had 6 days to my commencement at the treatment facility, and my dad and my sister-in-law showed up at the treatment facility's doors, not during visiting hours. And I was wondering why they were there. And my sister-in-law came up to me and had told me that my younger brother was killed riding his mountain bike to work that morning. Mm. And so I didn't know what to think. I'd lost my mom, I'd lost my younger brother. Here I was. I thought I was, if anybody was to go, like I would have been the one to take. And then yet you take there's the two closest people to me, just like that. So well, being honest, I said this to Sam the other day when I went and see my brother at the hospital, and there was, we had to make the decisions. He saved some people's lives with his organs. There was definitely some positives. But I told Sam when I went back for the 6 days, just to kind of motivate the rest of the guys that were in the house, because I was, with only 6 days to my commencement, I was kind of a bit of a mentor. Like I'd been in the house. I was on my way out. There's a lot of people that were kind of looking up to me and my story and the reason why I was there and what I had been through. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to let that kind of, as much as I knew I was going to probably struggle at my brother's wake, I didn't want to let any of the guys down at the facility. So I went back and I commenced, kind of knowing that I was going to fail shortly down the road, as funny as that sounds. But
it kind of makes sense to me at the same time, but I'm also scared. I mean, you're sitting in front of me now, so I know that my worst fears didn't come true, but yeah, that's a concerning scenario for sure.
I can't even imagine so when I went, the thoughts, the wrestling in your mind during those days, those 6 days, like between when you got that news about your brother and then waiting for this program to commence and finish, like, and just the self-awareness that you're sharing about knowing you wanted to be an example for people, but you were wrestling with your inner demons at the same time.
Absolutely. And I knew, like, even if I went back out, that I had already picked up enough in my time there that I wasn't gonna, as funny as it sounds, I wasn't gonna stay back out. Thank God it didn't get taken myself, because it's that easy.
Yep.
But I had already picked up enough and learned enough about myself and about recovery, and knew that I had the strength that I knew I wasn't going to stay back out. And I didn't. I was out for a few months, and I was able to find my way back. And it was quite funny. I went back to the same place, and my second time around, I really stuck with it, and I got some clean time. I got some clean time after I commenced that time. And then, but still the journey continues from there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think we need to be a little more pragmatic and honest about the way people do experience addiction and provide this, information up front. Like, for instance, opioid use disorder lasts on average 15 years for people. That means it ends. That means most people recover. Also, during that 15 years, most people go to treatment 6 or 7 times. That means that's normal. It's not unusual. Lapses and relapses in this journey of recovery is clearly, Shawn, not a straight line, right? We go up and we go down and we go back and forth. And that's why I really feel like we need to celebrate incremental change. And the change is not only about just maintaining sobriety for consecutive days. I mean, those things, that's great and wonderful, but the change in your life that's most significant is probably not just the number of days you have sober.
As long as you're looking at the positive and wanting something better for yourself and picking up a little bit here, a little bit there, as long as you're on an upward trajectory of wanting a better life, you're going to get it. You'll get it eventually.
And lapses and relapses don't take any value away from the bricks that you've laid in the foundation already. You can always go back to that foundation and continue building on it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's just your opportunity for learning again
Mhm.
right there. And you've already shared, Shawn, that I mean, that's the approach you're taking here to life, is that you're a lifelong learner. And I think when people approach life with that perspective of I have so much to learn and I'm never going to stop, that the potential for change is always there. Yeah.
That's right. So my last job that I had, I only, and I say this, I learned a lot about myself and all these things, and I had that bit of a recovery journey. My recovery didn't finish there. I'm still recovering now, obviously, but my last job that I went to, I only wish I had I call it maybe the strength of the courage to put myself out there and ask for help. Or I
Mhm.
only wish that maybe there was somebody there that had seen it in me and maybe asked me if I needed help. And
Mhm.
so, like, if there's anything that I can say, like for any like maybe supervisor or employers to hear, that it needs to be made easier, and people need to be more open to helping these people that may be struggling. These people that are struggling with anything need to be able to feel able to come forward with it and not feel threatened by it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you ever have these discussions in any of your toolbox talks or any of your safety orientations or anything?
No, we didn't. And I mean, if I were to go back, if I were to go back today, and there, I'm looking at maybe going back and trying to make a difference now, and shedding some light on this and showing people that there's a way that this can all be talked about, and people can be made to feel comfortable about coming forward with whatever problems. And problems they're gonna arise in every trade and in every company, um, and every individual. There's gonna be days where they're struggling with something, and it may not always even be addiction,
Mm-hmm.
but they need to be able to come forward with. The
Yeah,
workplace needs to be able to have room for people with these areas that they need help in.
yeah,
Mhm.
you need
Yeah.
to be a human being and not just a robot every day. And I think
Yeah.
that's sometimes, especially when there's a lot of pressure to get a lot of work done, there's pressure for us to act more like robots than human beings. And I mean, some days, sometimes some of us can do that for a while, but then life happens, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, you got to have a balanced lifestyle. I'm learning about that. Like I did the whole went to treatment, thought I was good, stopped going, and I shit the bed hard.
Mm,
Like you gotta do a little bit every day.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the second time you went for treatment, did things, I mean, it's never a smooth, even incline from there, but like what did things look like after your second round at King Haven?
Things were great. Like I stayed clean, I think, for almost 3 years. I stayed connected with counseling, probably maybe a year coming out of treatment, maybe not even.
Mm-hmm.
My little boy was set to be born, and my counselor at Fraser House was going to be moving to the island, and we I kind of just closed the door. I thought I was better and happy family moving on with my life, and without any of that maintenance, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like that. It was maybe a year and a half before I was coming home beat from work, and have the fiance being, like, you need to spend a little bit of time with the boy. You don't have much energy, though. You come home bagged, and then
Mm-hmm.
here you think a little bump's going to help you out and carry you through to have a little bit more energy, and it doesn't take long for your addiction to come right back and fold you over, right? We know
Mm-hmm.
that.
I'm amazed by that because I know that there's a misunderstanding out there by people who have not been realistically exposed to the world of using substances. And they think that people are trying to be irresponsible or they're just like being stupid or whatever when they're using. But you were literally, in that case, using for the benefit of relationship with your son, probably one of the most honorable motivations. And I'm not saying that that makes anything okay, but it's like your motivation is you're trying to do the right and good thing. You're doing your best to survive. You're doing your best to invest in your children.
Yeah, that's very good point, that we know that addiction problematic substance use is all about trying to solve a problem. Yeah.
I just kind of wanted a little bit like for dudes who are out there who have never had any kind of exposure to counseling, except for maybe something that they may have been forced into, or, a doctor with a poor bedside manner or something like that. Like, what is it like when, like Shawn, when you first did you pick up the phone or did you email somebody? Like, how did it start? And then for Sam, how do you build that? Like, what's a therapist thinking?
Well, like it was for me this time around. The kids went, the kids got taken, and I was desperate and I was broken. I had been to Fraser House, like I said before, so it was a pretty easy option for me because I knew where I didn't want to be. And once the kids kind of got involved, I was dead set on changing my life around, getting the kids back. And so, Fraser House was comfortable and in my town. So like it didn't take much for me to find my way through the doors. Like I said before, like, if I hadn't have been to treatment those few times before, or, learned these things or been to a few of these groups or taken like an anger management course and relationship courses, I wouldn't have known or like had the courage to just go and pull myself in and know right away that, this is a place that's going to get me connected and point me in the direction of a few places that I need to go in order to get my life back on track. And then it all falls back on, I remember my mom in my early 20s. I remember my mom saying, there's a Fraser House, a little counseling place in town. You should go check them out. I still remember it. And like years later, look where you are walking through the doors, and I'm so forever grateful that I did.
So funny.
So Sam, what are counselors thinking when, you first get somebody come through the door, the first time you sit down? What are your goals? Or like, I think a lot of people, because the whole just say no movement was so incredibly devastatingly damaging. That's what people expect. They expect that they're going to go see a substance use counselor and they're going to get told that drugs are bad for them and they're going to get lectured. Is that what happens?
No, that's not what happens. Certainly not within these walls. So, I mean, counselors aren't a monolith and I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak to where I come from. And that is, I take an approach of like really in trying to invite my clients to lead, right? To just person to person, just be there, lead, and we're going to follow where you're going to need to go. I am trying to convey a place of non-judgment. Like I'm not here to tell you anything about your life. You know what your life is like. And I'm not going to judge any decisions that you've made or, any patterns that you might find yourself in or whatever it is. Like it's ideally a place of non-judgment and a place where someone can come and just be who they are, where through building of relationship, like relationship is the cornerstone. So through that building of relationship, the hope is that someone will feel comfortable enough to, gradually start to open up. And I mean, sometimes it happens more than gradually, but sometimes it takes a long time.
I was going to say, so does it happen in the first hour? Like, should you feel like it's all working and that you're on your way after the first session or two?
Certainly not. We're just getting to know each other in that first hour, right? Although sometimes people come through the door and it's like letting the pin out and they just need to, they've found a space where they can just let it all start to come out and unfold, right? And that's totally valuable as well. But oftentimes it's that building of relationships. So you're just feeling each other out for a while and you're creating safe space for your story to unfold, for you to be able to tell your story and start kind of mining where you're at and what's contributed to where you're at and where you're going.
All right.
Do you want to give Shawn, do you want to have a last word here, Shawn, a message of hope or something for folks?
Well, maybe my poem that I wrote when I was kind of on my down and outs, maybe a little bit of it. Yeah.
Please.
Okay. Do you know who you are as you look up at the stars? Why you here? Which way to steer? When to love? What to fear? How do you act? Are you yourself? Don't want to be like anyone else. What are your thoughts? What are your dreams? Is it all as it seems? O eye for an eye, O proof of the truth, O by the sky is our roof. We all live under, some happy, some sad. Everyone wonders, is this good or is this bad? What is right? What is wrong? Don't know the words to the God's sacred songs. Do you give what you take? Do you try and correct your mistakes? All of what have you been shown? Oh my, the world has grown. Yes, you are here. Yes, you will go. What will come next? You will never know. Smile, not frown. Look straight ahead, not at the ground. Reach for the stars. Set your goals high. Be who you are. Always try. Never give up. Never back down. Make the most as the world grows round.
Thank you, Shawn.
Beautiful.
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk has been a Fraser House Society project, executive produced and co-hosted by Karen Jansen, managed by Delan Young on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Production of this material has been made in part through a financial contribution from Health Canada. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the views of Health Canada or Fraser House Society. The content of this podcast is conversation between people with living experience and should not be taken as professional advice. Okay, Shawn wanted today's shout out to go to the construction companies of all his buddies who have supported him in his journey and for supporting the promotions of Off the Clock Toolbox Talk. So in no particular order, thanks to Blue City Construction, J Flores Construction, High Street Village REW, Leadcore, Solmar, Quantum Properties, A&R Construction, Diverse, Unitech, Mainland Sand and Gravel, and many more. We thank you for standing behind Shawn and our tradespeople in the drug poisoning crisis. Please help save lives and continue to spread the word. Tradespodcast.com.